In the US, we are once again at the doorstep of another presidential election. Oh joy. Your vote for a third-party candidate is a vote for the bad guy. We've all heard the phrase. Some of us have even had the misfortune of hearing it coming from our own mouths. Henceforth referred to as the cursed phrase, this common script takes on an implicit future retrospective lens that I find keenly bothersome. For one, it is always spoken with the post-Fordist parently tone of, "You allowed this to happen, you know," which would make any working-class soul roll their eyes. But it also demands that the speaker know something about the future, which they simply could not unless they were in with the cabal of apparent lizard folks running the show and making big political decisions. That was a joke. The phrase implies cynically that you, third-party voter, are at the epicenter of the speaker's candidate's inevitable future failure. If you fail to bend to their bumper sticker worldview, you're the problem. The people who perpetuate this phrase like some sort of brain-eating alien parasite are oftentimes the same folk who suggest that your vote matters, and that you should vote, no matter who you vote for, because it is your civic duty. This tongue-in-cheek lip service placation further balloons what is either at best the sheer buffoonery, or at worst the nightmarish manipulation of the primary phrase on trial here. It could be buffoonery, because in no world can your vote matter and also be an attribution for something other than what it is for. What the perpetrator of the cursed phrase is suggesting is that your vote actually does not matter, that your vote, your desires as a voter, are utterly meaningless when filtered through the pulsing, cancerous man-machine monstrosity that is the Republic's voting system. The implication is so cynical, one might not even bother voting at all. But then again, if you express this despondence, surprise, your non-vote is also a vote for the bad guy. However, I find it interesting that these floating votes, non-votes, and third-party votes never transfer to the good guy. Suppose a particularly contrarian chap votes third party, and while his candidate inevitably fails, the proverbial good guy ends up winning the election. Would this voter not be responsible for the success and triumph of all that is good and pure and holy in this life? But he receives no award, no praise. He only receives nagging should the bad guy win the race. But if third-party votes and non-votes are Schrodinger's cat, then their voters deserve as much praise as they deserve shame. This voter exists in a quantum superposition of being both the hero and the villain of the world's narrative, being literally Harry Potter and being literally Voldemort, being literally Allied powers and being literally Hitler. And he is at once both and neither. But what he is to the perpetrator of the cursed phrase is nothing more than the most cynical opportunity to apply social pressure on people who otherwise do not feel represented by the more popular candidates available to them. You're being pushed off a ledge. It is evident that the sayers of the cursed phrase do not believe that your vote matters. Let that be perfectly clear. In the same sense, they care nothing for civic duty. They cannot believe in it. They are corporate to their rotten cores. These folks invoking civic duty is about as genuine as Burger King sporting a rainbow flag. The appeal to civic duty is just that, an appeal. It implies moral obligation, particularly the moral obligation of voting not for third-party candidates, not for the bad guy, but for the proverbial good guy. There is no civic duty here. There is only cleverly crafted manipulation or the most unadulterated, inconsistent, hypocritical buffoonery to appear anywhere on Earth since the notion that the Great War would end all wars rather than make a business out of devastation. Your vote is your vote. It means nothing in the grand scheme of things, especially when faced with complexities like electoral colleges and rigged voting machines. Right? That's one perspective, and it's not necessarily a cynical one. Because if your vote does not matter, then you are oppressed. And if you are smart enough to see where that oppression is coming from, you can crush it. To outrightly say that your vote does not matter is a sign of hope. But to veil hopelessness and despondence in empty platitudes and manipulative demands, such as the cursed phrase, your inner state is one of conflict and nihilism. And if you're that diseased, stay home. And if you must leave the house, it is requested that you wear a muzzle. On the other hand, if you're a third-party voter or non-voter, that is your boulder to push up your hill. And if the Republic is real, if it is not a facade, thinly veiling nothing more than military and corporate interests, then it is not just likely but inevitable that a third-party candidate become president someday. They're everywhere, after all. Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Bernie Sanders, Jill Stein. I guess you could say RFK. In fact, plenty of standard Kirkland brand political figures are beginning to take on some qualities of third-party candidates to advertise their appeal as people's interests change. Whether or not that is a good thing is subject for a different rant, but that is what is happening. Your vote is part of a dynamic system that is thrusting forward through time and moving in no particular direction other than whatever the aggregated collaboration of all events has deemed. To paraphrase a particularly mediocre thinker, who really knew nothing, either everything matters or nothing does. It's partly a matter of perspective, and there are ways of veiling the void of meaninglessness in language that sounds hyper-meaningful. Some folks have become quite adept at hiding their own emptiness within phrases and worldviews that look like the moral high ground, with all the sulfuric charm of bad eggs being cooked over brimstone hellfire. Watch out for these. At their core, these perspectives are not just ethically rotten, but they are a glimpse into the endless void of cynicism that is pointlessly infecting the American public.